Bold prediction time. What do you believe? And what do you believe hard enough that you would bet your own money on it? This college football season, rapidly approaching. I got one right here that qualifies as a 9.5 on the boldness scale. Remember the rules. If you predict something 9.5 or higher and it hits, you get a chalice of supremacy. Austin from Cape Coral. Is it Cape Coral? I think it's Cape Coral, Florida. No team north of the Mason-Dixon line will make the Final Four in the playoff. For our purposes, and this is going to be debated, for our purposes, we took the Maryland-Pennsylvania state line and we just drew a line straight across the country. That's our Mason-Dixon line. You know what? Sue us, because it is for simplicity's purposes, and here's what it basically boiled down to. Ohio State's north of this thing, so they can't make the Final Four. Michigan can't make it. Penn State can't make it. Notre Dame can't make it. Oregon, Utah, they can't make the Final Four. None of them are allowed to make it, or this prediction goes up in smoke. Look, here's what could happen. I suppose Ohio State could win their conference, but they'd have to lose the first game they play. They get a bye in the playoff. They'd have to lose or they'd already be in the Final Four. So, yeah, these teams could technically make the playoff, and they could lose and be out, and the prediction would still be alive. I just think this is way too bold. You're telling me we're going to have a Final Four with none of the major Big Ten teams? You're telling me we're going to have a Final Four? Like, what happened? Did USC make a run? Did the Big Ten just get knocked out entirely? I don't know. This is a 9.5 on the boldness scale for me. Next up, we've got a two-parter here. Nicholas from Athens said Clemson will beat Georgia in the opener, and they'll win the ACC title, which means they make the playoff. This is a 9. Jesse, I'm going to change it. 9.25 on the boldness scale. We have a line on this game at FanDuel. Clemson is a 13.5-point underdog to Georgia in week 1. They are the second odds-on favorite to win the ACC right now. Long shot to beat Georgia. Pretty competitive to win the ACC. Clemson, they turned the ball over a lot last year, but they forced a lot of turnovers as well. So if they can cut down on one and then they can continue to force the other, a game against Georgia, who knows what could happen? It's a tall task. Georgia comes into those things completely tuned up. They're playing in Atlanta. If they do beat Georgia, though, there's some correlation here. If they are good enough to beat Georgia, they're probably good enough to be the best team in the ACC. So, if Clemson beats Georgia week 1, they'd be the immediate favorite to win the conference. But you got to beat Georgia. And that's a 9.25 because that alone is going to be tough. Next up, it sounds bold, but is it? CJ from Atlanta. 2 SEC quarterbacks finished number 1 and number 2 for the Heisman this year. I made this an 8.5, although it's never happened before. I don't think it's like out of the realm of possibility, because if you look at the FanDuel odds to win the Heisman right now, how about 9 SEC quarterbacks are in the top 15 of the Heisman odds? 6 of the top 8 Heisman favorites are SEC quarterbacks. Carson Beck's up there, Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Nico Iamaleava, Garrett Nussmeier, Wigman, Jackson Arnold, even Brady Cook's 15th. So if Cam Ward at Miami doesn't blow up, if Dylan Gabriel at Oregon doesn't blow up, this could happen. And even if they do, a couple of these guys have big-time years, that could happen. That's an 8.5 on the boldness scale for me, and that's a really creative prediction, by the way. And lastly, let's go to the Big 12 for just a second. Carson from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Oklahoma State finally wins its first Big 12 championship since 2011. 2 Big 12 teams make the playoff. 9.5 on the boldness scale here. Oak State has the 3rd best odds to win the conference. That's not crazy. They are extremely experienced on offense, especially the O-line. They need defense to improve. Do you get conference championship game magic here? Because that, I think, is what would have to happen. Let's say Kansas State goes 12-0, and they're in the conference title game. And let's say Oklahoma State goes 10-2, but they make the conference title game and win it. There you go. Oklahoma State won the Big 12, but Kansas State, if they were 12-1, they may still make the conference or the playoff as well. That's how you would probably have to go about getting your two Big 12 teams in there. Conference championship game magic notwithstanding, that's a 9.5 on the boldness scale. A little too rich. No bigger Big 12 fan than me, but a little bit too rich.